We're just hanging out, talking to the High Moon guys, drinking some water, talking about a new Transformers game. Yeah, you guys just showed us the game, but kind of go back in time and talk about when you finished the last game. What were you happy with? What were you excited to go and kind of improve?
I'm incredibly proud of the last game. I thought we did a great job of hitting the hardcore gamer who was also a fan, in the sense that there are a lot of people who just really wanted a great Transformers game, and I think we gave it to them. So I'm in general, I think I'm particularly proud of the game. I think that when I look back at some of the critical reception, I think, quite frankly, there was a lot of very accurate criticisms of the game. You know, Z and I talk about it all the time, but you know, repetition, the things that you do, the AI weren't, let's say, good enough. People couldn't find ammo. That's the one that everybody always talks about.
I do remember having some trouble and cursing a couple of times trying to find the ammo I needed.
It's totally fair criticism. So what we did on this one is, you know, we really, well, let's put ammo aside for a second. We made ammo.
You guys did that in the last game. You put it aside in the last game.
Yeah, fair enough.
Hard to find.
It's much easier to find now, and keep working on it.
Okay. Go back to the drawing board. That one.
No, I'm just teasing. You know, that's definitely a relatively easy problem to solve. Clip sizes have changed, ammo, all that kind of stuff has changed. But the two big ones for me were the repetition in gameplay and the AI system. Mm-hmm. And you want to talk AI for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. We actually wound up taking a lot of the feedback that we kind of got off the first game and took our AI system back to scrap and started it fresh, new, to take advantage of all the new characters that we have in this game in terms of their abilities and how they're going to play off of those abilities. So instead of making a generic AI that can handle anything, we're kind of having AI that will actually react to the way you're playing the game as a certain character. And it definitely provided a much greater variety of gameplay in terms of how you interact with the rest of the characters in the world. So that's been a big change for us, and definitely has paid out in dividends so far in our development.
I mean, that kind of hits on one of the big things that's fundamentally different this time, right? I mean, in this successor game, it's less a sequel and more kind of a successor, the way you described it to us. It's the fact that this is a crafted single-player game from beginning to end, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how did you come to that decision? Was that hard to have to leave behind? You know, a lot of people like co-op a lot, but you're getting some pretty big payoff by going a different direction.
Yeah, you know, so I would say that as a director and as a team, the hardest decision, the one we deliberated on the most, was co-op and where we stood on co-op. And honestly, there's a lot of guys in the studio, guys and girls in the studio, play a lot of co-op. It's a very favored way to play. But as we really took a hard look, and going back to that other big criticism of repetition, you know, part of that was the co-op experience kind of pushed us into a place where we had to kind of generalize a lot of the experience that you had to support the co-op engagement. And you know, we talked about it, we deliberated for a long time, and really the answer for us to improve the quality of the gameplay experience you got and make it be deeper, more engaging, a higher quality story, was to go for a much more focused single player experience where we really could embrace each character, give them even deeper abilities. You know, and you know, a lot of that's the edge cases, like how does this thing affect that? Well, everything was very generalized in War for Cybertron,
right.
And now there's a lot more unique experiences you get based on specific abilities.
Yeah, you guys talked about how many characters you got in the game, which seems like a lot. You guys showed us a bunch already, but so is it hard to craft a story where there's so many moving parts and so many characters off doing their own thing and still shape a story that's interesting, that people can follow along with and keep coming back to those different characters and manage it all? Seems like there's a lot of chaos going on.
I think it'd be nice if you asked easier questions.
What's your favorite color?
Thank you. Story's a big one for us, right? Because you know, the other big change, and this had to do with the repetition stuff, is we don't have two separate campaigns, one Autobot, one Decepticon, right? It's one continuous experience. So that allows us, I believe, to tell a better overarching story. But because we're switching characters so often, the thing that keeps me up at night is, are we doing enough service to each character, and are we really giving you enough time to invest in any one character? Yeah, that's a big concern, you know? So what we've done is we take the very best we can on these character handoffs. When you're switching from one character to another, we really try and make that be as interactive as possible, and also as seamless and innately kind of make sense as we can possibly make it. But it is, I would say, probably the biggest story challenge is I'm playing as this guy. Now I'm playing as this guy. I have to really shift my emotional, like where I care and why I care about this guy. And we do that often. There's a lot of playable characters in the game. So I guess all I can say is we put a lot of time and effort into it, and the cinematics, but also into dialogue and how we treat the mechanics.
Right.
Well, I mean, when we were first talking about, kind of having this conversation, we talked about the idea of like you guys have sort of crafted a new gameplay style. One of the things that sort of sets the game apart and makes it less of a sequel and more of a kind of a successor in some ways. But the more I've seen of the game, the more it seems like it's not just crafting a single gameplay style. You guys are crafting like a bunch of gameplay styles for this game, which really is kind of a big difference with the first game, which was, I loved War for Cybertron, but it was very much a single experience pretty much throughout, with the possible exception of just changing over to vehicle mode, and you had some kind of like racy sections, right, where you're racing through an area. But here you've got probably a dozen different.
Feels like
about that. Yeah, I think one of the things that we've done a pretty good job of on this game has been to take that character, and rather than to give them 10 different abilities that all are kind of mediocre done, we're really drilled down hard on each ability in terms of being able to make them feel good and smooth and exactly what the player is going to desire when they're playing the game. So when you pick up and play as a character with their special ability, it's really intuitive to the player, feels great, works well with all the AI, and that's where we're kind of getting the benefit out of that.
And it's part of their personality, So Jazz is a cool character. We're really excited about him. He's got this grappling hook that, just from a mechanical point of view, it's simple, it's fast, it's responsive, it never breaks the flow of the action. But then at the same time, from a story point of view, you go back to the cartoon. He used to have this grappling hook, and and it fits in his like kind of style and who he is, and the animations then that we present about that guy are kind of inherent in his style. So it's taking something exactly like as he's talking about, where like a mechanic like grapple, and make it not just functionally fun and a gameplay break and all that kind of stuff, but also making that intimately fit with who this guy is. Because remember, you got to care about this guy, because we're going to move you on to a new character eventually.
Right.
You talked about during the stealth sequences where you're Bumblebee and you can kind of go into stealth mode and sneak up behind a guy. You talked about the enemy patterns where they would transform into different like modes. When
I
they
thought
were,
that was a really cool idea.
Which is,
yeah,
it was really cool. Did you run into that a lot with the AI in terms of like, I guess the question I'm trying to get at is like, did the different mechanics, whether it be stealth or action or grappling, did you find that affected the AI that you were developing in a variety of ways?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we experienced this in the first title by having vehicles, right? I mean, at any point in time, if you're playing a Starscream, you can just take off and fly away, which presents a whole set of problems, which is really difficult to kind of deal with, where if you have a character that can only melee and then a jet takes off, like, what do you do, right? So we definitely did a much better job in this game of building in the AI's reaction to those abilities. And so, if a guy's a grappling hook that can maneuver like Jazz and you can get around the environment pretty quickly, you need to have AI that can also reevaluate their tactical, use something that's special to them in order to kind of counteract that. And so you have like the stealth step you're mentioning, where the guard is in scanning mode, kind of looking for Bumblebee. If he finds him, he turns into battle mode, and that means it's kind of on. Now you have to change your gameplay to react to how he's found you.
The other thing that we do is, and this is the way I do, look at the AI stuff, is whenever it's playing, you should be able to pause the game at any moment, and if you and I are playing together, right, I'm demoing the game for you, pause the game at any moment and say, well, what's that AI doing? What's he thinking?
I can call you and ask you that question?
Yes, you should call me
when I'm playing the game?
Yes, that would be good. So if it's really clear, if it's really obvious what he's doing and how he's behaving, then you can then, as the player, start to make those tactical choices that make that AI feel engaging. So we spend a lot of time on the audio, the animations, and the conditions by which a guy will change his behavior to make it as obvious as possible, so that you can then, frankly, manipulate the rules on that guy and therefore be smart about beating him. And sometimes that takes the form of a guy who does a transform. Other times it takes the form of a big behavioral state change, or whatever it happens to be. But anytime we make a AI reacting to you and the things that you've done move, we try and make it as overt as possible.
Well, another thing you guys were talking about earlier that I'm pretty fascinated by in terms of distinctions with the first game is your all's approach to weapons and equipment and all that kind of stuff. Can you tell me a little bit more about where you guys are going with
Actually, that guy should tell you about it because he's the one who wrote it.
Yeah, we made a pretty major change from WFC1 to this game in terms of everything about weapons. The first game's weapons were kind of received mediocrely. They were a little bit repetitive and generic, and we kind of went the exact opposite scale in this game. Took them to number 10 or 11, and I'm really excited to kind of show you how that's changed in this game in terms of being able to customize your weapons as you play through the campaign. So you're going to basically pick up your first weapon blueprint, be able to kind of collect items to go and power that thing up and decide how you want to play the game. So if you want to play the game with an assault rifle and level it up, that's great. If not, if you want to use a cluster cannon, you can use that. And it kind of gives you the player a chance to kind of really power up and see how you want to play the game. In addition to that, we've really changed the camera view for the player's point of view. We've zoomed in so it's a much tighter framing on the characters, which has really exposed more of their kind of personality. You can kind of see them. Their whole arm is actually now a weapon. And they're not holding weapons, their arm transforms into a weapon. And then as you switch sides, it goes away, flips over to the other side, the whole arm transforms out to the other weapon. So we've really embraced weapons as being something that is science fiction, it's transformery, it has to be big, it has to be to a number 11, and that's where we're going with it right now.
And you also have like the equipment idea in there too, right?
Yep.
Like that's kind of, it sounded like it was kind of drawn a little bit out of multiplayer from War for Cybertron.
Very similar to that. We've taken that, some of the equipment from War for Cybertron, we've added some more things to it. Now, as you go along, you're going to be able to pick up equipment and deploy it on the battlefield, whether it's to kind of help you out as an offensive equipment or to basically help you in defensive mode. So we have two types of equipment that you can carry with you in the game.
Very cool.
Those character-specific abilities, for example, like Bumblebee can turn invisible, Jazz the grapple hook, Optimus Prime has the like call down artillery strike. Did you guys find that having that and then also being able to robot mode transform into car mode, how is those like played together, having all those options for gameplay?
You definitely have a lot of tools in your tool belt, right, when you play this game, right? You have your primary and secondary weapons, you can have gear, you have your vehicle at any time that you would want, and then you have this special ability. So what we try to do is simplify, excuse me, this water's killing me.
Strong. Strong water.
Strong.
Smooth.
This may not be water.
So what we try to do is standardize and simplify. For example, the vehicles, the controls for all the vehicles are exactly the same. Actually, it's a system that we did on War for Cybertron. It's very successful, in my opinion, that the way a tank controls is exactly the same way as a plane does. So we keep that as smooth as possible for you. What we had on War for Cybertron 1, or War for Cybertron, was the two bumpers were your two abilities, and that was picked by what character you were. Now it's reserved to specifically just the right bumper. And that right bumper, all those abilities you mentioned, it's still the same button every time. So you're just used to, this is my tactical changer button. You know, whether it's a 360 damage attack or cloaking or an artillery strike, it still tactically changes the battlefield. And so that you just get used to that one button being it. And that, I think, for me at least, was a real good standardization simplifier for that.
We've stuck with the same model of, if you want to play as the car and not run around as a robot, it's your choice. You can transform it anytime you want in our game, and just like the last one, and that gives people the ability to kind of choose their tactics as well. So if that's your thing, rolling around as a car shooting, you can still do it as much as you want.
You don't have access to your special ability when you're in car form. Might be one limiter, right?
There's no like unique secondary special car move.
There, we've had stuff in and we've taken it out, and I don't know where we're exactly on the fence on that, to be honest, because we've changed our mind a few times. On War for Cybertron, you had barrel roll or dash, and we got to figure out exactly where we're at with that. But for sure, your robot form is that tactical changer, is that right button. So you can. Well, this is a great choice, right? So I'm playing as a character that can cloak. I can only turn and cloak on in my robot form. I can quickly transform to vehicle. Now I can drive around as an invisible car or fly around as an invisible plane. But while I'm in vehicle form, I can't re-trigger that cloak. I'd have to transform out and do it.
Yeah. Do you find then that there's ample reason to transform into vehicle, and you're not going to have people stay in robot form the whole time so they can use their abilities? Or
what we saw in the last one is, some people just like transforming, and other people were very happy to stay in one form or another. And
I don't like change. I fear it.
Well, then you'll probably pick one form and stay in it, which is perfectly fine. And there's no reason why you shouldn't play the one way you want to play,
I live
right?
with my parents, yeah. Do not change.
Yeah, our goal wasn't to basically make the player play 50-50 or any percentage. The goal was to let the player do as much as they want when possible. So, like, there's definitely sections where you're flying where you don't really have an option. You have to be in your jet form or your helicopter form and fly. But other than that, it's really however the player wants to play. If they want to play as a car, go for it. If you want to play as a robot, it's your thing.
Well, it also seemed like in a couple of the sections that you showed us that you've added a little bit more kind of mobility to some of the robot form stuff in terms of like dashing and sprinting capability.
We had sprint into the game as well, so that was something that a lot of the people wanted to be able to sprint a short distance in a tactical fight without having to do the transform to your vehicle boost, then transform back when it was a short distance. So we added sprint in as a way to kind of still allow you to quickly move across the battlefield without having to transform.
And it's also standardized too. So now everybody's left bumper is sprint, which was not the case in War for Cybertron 1, right? Some characters had sprint and other ones didn't. Or the sprint, or not sprint,
dash.
sorry,
The
dash.
dash, yeah.
The dash. So now you have both dash and sprint and everybody has it. So
Oh,
it's
that's
another
cool.
way that you can all use it and keep it the standard for you. So because we're switching characters so much.
We're talking a lot about like some of the actual things that you're doing in the game, but I also think from what I've seen of the game, there's a little bit of visual aesthetic that's advanced in this game. Was that a conscious choice to kind of move things forward in a certain direction with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, visuals are the first thing that ropes someone in to decide if they even want to learn more about the game.
Right.
I mean, over and above, doesn't matter how great your game is, if the visuals are not attractive, they're not even going to give you a chance to look at it. So we spent a lot of time on redoing characters, redoing worlds. I will tell you, honestly, an all-metal world with all-metal characters is challenging, right?
Yeah.
It's very challenging. Most games have some small percentage of metal, and that specularity looks great because you only see it every once in a while. And if we put the specularity on everything, you just, it would be like, like this with these lights trying to look, right? So we definitely spent a lot of time on metal. Actually, one of the things that we will show you a little bit later is, some of the research we did on how to make metals look better, look more like metals, and provide a lot of different kinds of metals: rusted, pitted, bronze, tin. So, not that I'm saying all those things necessarily exist on Cybertron, but at least some variety in metal. And that was a pretty big, important part of what we did. We also go to a bunch of places that weren't in the last game that also kind of allowed us to stretch our legs a little bit.
I would think it was, thinking back at the demo, I don't remember seeing like a single plant or a single like natural thing. And obviously that's, we're on Cybertron, so you wouldn't have that. But at the same time, I wasn't thinking about it while I was looking at the game because it's very varied vistas. It seems like that would be hard to do, to create all these varieties of environments,
I mean, the thing that popped for me was just how much. I actually just replayed War for Cybertron the last couple of weeks, but in advance of coming down and seeing you guys, and it seems like stuff really pops more to me in what I've seen of the new game. Like it pops off the screen, like if anything, like War for Cybertron, there were times I lost track of where certain characters were, whether it was my main character or the enemies I was fighting, because it all kind of melded.
Yeah, we learned a lot, honestly, making that game. One of the things that we ran into and that we kind of actively fight against is if your backgrounds are really complicated and you're stationary, that's cool, right? But if you're moving, and remember moving quickly in car or whatever, that really complex background gets, very difficult to see and muddy. And therefore, because it's muddy, you can't pick out enemies from good guys and whatever. So there's despite the fact that there's a lot of detail in the game, we try and be really, really careful about how we tile that detail so that in motion it doesn't get too crazy and holds up both in stationary and in motion. And then, we've definitely done some improvements in how we light the game. And, lighting is kind of this continuous thing that we will work on forever. And, it's great to hear that you guys like the way it looks. We look at it and we see warts and how much more work we have to do. And, we've certainly got some time left. But, I'd say the game definitely looks better than War for Cybertron. I'm not happy with where the visuals are yet. I don't think any of us are. I feel like we have a ways to go. But I also know that we have some really talented people, and we got the time to do it.
Yeah, you guys got great concept artists.
Thank you.
I was going to say, it seems like another big push for this game has been making some large set piece moments. You saw the thing where Metroplex was in stomping around.
pretty big.
the city. Yeah,
That is
he's-
a big
He's
dude.
huge.
Yeah,
he's
he's
bigger
pretty
than
big.
I am.
He's bigger than
He's
big.
like stomping around, and you have like Optimus Prime running around through his feet while he's smashing all these turrets and stuff. Obviously, it seems like that takes a lot of work. But was there a push from the very beginning of the game, like we need to have big moments like this in the game?
You want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that is hard to do on Cybertron is get a sense of scale, right? I mean, there's no mailboxes or chairs that we can relate to as in our human world. So robots that are all still relatively the same size don't feel big anymore, right? And so for this game, we definitely push scale to a new level by really changing the scale of every character you kind of play in subtle forms, and even the AI you're playing against are all different kind of scales. So you can start to see how Bumblebee actually stacks up next to Optimus and how much bigger he actually is. And then we said, well, we got to push this further. And by pushing it further, we push it to Metroplex, who is gigantic, as you've seen. And seeing him, like you said, stomp around in the world just gives a whole different perspective as to where you stand on the size of this planet in relation to other robots. And it's been a real fun experience to kind of push those scales out.
Do you remember how big he is relative to Omega Supreme that we did?
I think he's about 2.5 times the size of Omega Supreme from the last game.
And Omega Supreme was big.
He was pretty
big.
big in the last
He was
game.
a big dude.
So,
Yeah, he was big.
yeah.
So Transformers can be metroplexual.
I'm not even going to touch that. That's terrible.
Let's go back to Drive.
It's better than the last joke, though. I like that one.
All right, I'm getting
You know,
better.
the other thing that's kind of cool about Metroplex, as you're asking about the big moments or whatever, is I do try and think a little bit about forget that this person looking at the game is a Transformers fan. Let's just see if there's someone who doesn't know anything about Transformers, or maybe is like, Transformers is for kids. If you see a big city-sized robot stomping around, I think you're interested if you play games. I think that's really compelling to you. So big moments like Metroplex were important from my point of view to go beyond just the already Transformers fans who are like, holy shit, Metroplex. Oh, sorry, cursed. Metroplex, you know, like, which I think is from a fan point of view is really cool and exciting, whatever. But if I don't know anything about it, a big city, he's just awesome. It's cool.
Got a hard question for you. Are Dinobots cool?
What's not cool about Space T-Rexes?
Yeah, Space T-Rex.
Space T-Rex.
Yeah.
It doesn't get much better than that, right?
I mean, it's going to be kind of a big deal for Transformers fans, certainly, the idea of the Dinobots showing back up. They've not really had much of a presence within Transformers fiction for a long time now.
Yeah, you know, there's been some pretty lousy, well, lousy is not the right word, some pretty contrived reasons for why they have their shapes, you know, time travel and alternate dimensions, and we really didn't want to do that. So we've got a pretty good story that in my mind makes sense for why they have these shapes and why they're on Cybertron. And then, you know, the gameplay that fits with this character is, you know, we were talking about variety and playing differently. First of all, he's big, right? He doesn't have a gun. He's a sword and shield, and if he wants to hit something from far away, he's got to pick up an enemy and throw it, right? So it really changes the way you play. And then, you know, on top of that, we're going through the story is him discovering what his new shape is and coming across his other buddies and discovering what their shapes are. So his special ability, that right bumper, is transform. He's the one character that can't transform whenever he wants. He kills enemies, earns rage, and that fuels his ability to transform. And then he becomes this big space T-Rex, and he's a god on the battlefield, right? But it really is a tactical change. You think differently about transformation just playing as him.
It seems like an interesting choice to have in this game that's primarily a shooter, and then you have this like character who shows up and he's kind of like, well, he is hand-to-hand, like combat. Was that a hard thing to, I don't want to say balance the gameplay, was that a hard thing to implement, like make this character who's like all about close quarters, like make that fun and exciting when your primary focus is a shooting game?
Absolutely. I mean, we've kind of built the game around shooting, and to have Space T-Rex with sword and shield definitely was a big change for us. It also provided us with a different break in the gameplay. So, you know, at a chance now you can get away from the shooting, go and try this out as a melee experience, and where you can chop guys in half, rip them apart, bite them in half, smack them with your tail, and have them go flying across the world. It's just a pretty fun experience to take a break and actually smash everything in your path. And so it was definitely a real fun experience to work on. Lots of challenges, but I think the payoff is going to really resonate well with the fans who've been looking to see Grimlock in a game for a long time now.
Yeah, I agree. And if you aren't a fan, it's just you've been shooting for a while and you've understand the rules of the system and you're leveling up weapons and all that stuff, and you feel like you've kind of cracked the nut of the game, and then you're like, oh wait, here's a whole different way of thinking. Like even because I've been using my vehicle whenever I want, right? Not just that, but also the sword and shield. I think it really is gonna turn you 90 degrees in terms of the way you think about how you're playing, and I think that's going to be really engaging to people.
It's great the way he's introduced to the story, and you can really take on like, okay, I know why he's here. I'm going to get pissed off, and I'm going to play and get some vengeance for what's happened to him and his team. And so it's going to be real fun to do that as a player.
I do. I think we do a good job with him in particular of that emotional investment. Like you really care that you're him and what's happened to you. You get that fast, and then you just kind of carry that through.
Well, one of the other things you guys, I know you guys are not talking a whole lot yet about the multiplayer experience in the game. The multiplayer is coming back.
Absolutely.
And one thing that you have shared with us is that you're kind of blowing out the experience of creating your own transformer, basically, right?
Yeah, I think yes. Yes.
Well, the interview's over.
There you go. Good. Thanks, everybody.
Yes.
I got a thing.
That thing. Have that looked at. That's my suggestion. I had one too.
Yeah. Customization on the last one was barely scratch the surface of what you could do. I mean, you could pick a chassis and you could pick the color on it. There are 2 colors, right? And it was, quite frankly, more of a head nod towards customization than real customization. So as we sat down and thought about what we need this game to be, whenever you look at focus testing, it's like, I want to create my own transformer, and then everything else doesn't even matter in terms of what people want out of a transformer.
Seriously?
Game. Oh my God!
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Number 1 feature request by far.
Wow.
Yeah, by far.
I guess, not to interrupt, but yeah, I mean, that's what I did when I was 8. I would get down and like draw my own transformers.
Yeah.
Then I would draw like Optimus Prime and Bumblebee or whatever, but then you draw like your own
version.
That's what everybody wants.
bin transformer.
So what we did, I think, is pretty spectacular. You still have the 4 classes that we had talked about before that are based on vehicle types, right?
Which is?
The cars, trucks, planes, and tanks.
Okay.
Then with each of those, if you go into one of those to customize, you want to customize your car, for example. What we did is we divided the body into 6 parts. The head, the chest, upper arm, lower arm, legs, and wheels in the case of car. Is that 6?
Close enough.
All right, whatever. And what you can do then is pick the shoulders that you want, pick the lower arms that you want, pick the head that you want. For each vehicle type, for the cars, you have at least 6 options for every body part. So 6 to the 6th power is a lot. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Wow.
Right? Then you have the color choices on top of that. So you can really assemble the guy that you've always wanted to make.
So, just so I understand this correctly, you can customize the robot form individually of the car form.
The car form is based on the chest. That kind of determines what chassis that you have. Obviously, you pick the colors and the tires for that. That's kind of the degree of customization there. It really is mostly focused on the robot. So you're really picking what this part looks like from this, from the legs, from whatever. And it's not just cosmetic. There's actually some gameplay implication there. So what we added was a couple stats that are modified but based on what parts you pick. Your foot speed, your cooldown on your abilities.
That's cool.
There's a couple little things in there. So you can build the parts that make Bumblebee if you want, or you can just take his shoulders and side swipes chest and whatever, and you can mix them all around and mix and match and do whatever you want. And
Create the dream robot.
yeah,
It's like weird
it's
science.
pretty awesome. Honestly, the people that we've shown to it, especially who are Transformers fans, their reaction is always the same. It's they just sit there and they sit there for like 30 minutes and they're like, do you want it? And you're like, no, I'm good. And they're not playing, they're customizing their Transformer.
Right.
They're just mucking around in the UI. The parts that you have for your trucks are different than the parts for the cars, and the parts for your planes are different, and the parts for your your tanks are different. So there's no cross interpenetration there. So the heads for the cars are the heads for the cars. So each one of those has at least 6 choices for every single body part. Wow. So it's an absurd amount of customization.
Your character artist must love you.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, actually, it's probably more the texture memory loading part that drives him insane. But
yeah, we basically re-architect the way we build our characters completely for this title, just to be able to support this feature. So, this is a feature that was a pillar of our game that had to be addressed immediately because it affected the way every character in our game is built. And that's what allowed us to actually create a bunch of custom AI guys as well that can be, Franken AI with different pieces stuck together onto them, and so you can have a different type of character with variation just because of the way we do our customization on parts. So
did that make it hard to do the transformations? Because if you have like multiple parts, and then the transformation would be different, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm gonna defer to Jason when you talk with him about animation. He's gonna show you how some of the transforms work, but definitely a difficult problem, which is why we maintain the chest is what dictates what vehicle you get, because that contains the majority of the pieces that associate to the vehicle. So,
but it'll still look a little bit different depending on the parts. Like your vehicles will look.
Your vehicle is so if you take Sideswipe's chest, the vehicle will look like Sideswipe does. Yeah, it will look like Sideswipe.
So there's basically
except for the colors and the wheels, which you're picking separate.
So per faction, there's 24 vehicle types, basically.
Actually, you can forget kind of faction. Like what we had in the last one is you picked an Autobot and Decepticon.
Yeah.
So now we just push it all together. So your colors are your differences between the factions.
Got it.
But we collapsed all the...
Oh, you weren't going through that? Sorry.
There you go.
My bad.
Very
Ben,
nice.
derailing interviews.
Where the hell was I? So, you don't know.
So there's 24, right? About that. If there's 6 different chests,
there are
right?
6 different
for
chests
for
cars.
4 different vehicle types.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
At
doing my
least
multiplication right
Yes.
here.
Yes.
Right?
We're writers,
Yes.
right? We don't.
Math is
Come on.
rough.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
More than 6.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you start to add all the parts, it's really interesting. What I found is most people who play don't build a named character. They build their perfect transformer, which is really pretty cool to see. And when you pick it apart, you can see that's Silverbolt's shoulder pads and Air Raid's chest, and it's kind of cool. But for the most part, people are actually building their transformer, which is pretty fun to see. And I'm telling you, we've shown it to very, very few people. But the last person I showed it to, I was like, so what do you think? You think you'd hang out? And he was like, oh yeah. It's like I could spend days just customizing.
You can save the different ones you've.
Yes.
Can you save as many as you want? I made
Right now we have it so you can save 3 per class.
Okay.
So 12.
Cool.
That you get to make. And this is all going to be kind of intimately tied. We haven't kind of architected the system yet, but intimately tied into challenges and leveling and all that kind of stuff. So you can see, hey, I have all these shoulder pads, but I have to get to level 7 to unlock this new one, or I have to complete this challenge or whatever. So you can kind of build through and earn towards all these different parts.
Very cool.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I think it's definitely going to be one of those things that if we did nothing else different about multiplayer, people would be so amazed with how cool this is.
But we're doing other things as well.
Yeah.
So.
Great.
There you go. Good little hint.
Yeah. Sounds good. Did you?
No, I think that probably covers our bases. I mean, in case our enthusiasm hasn't come across, I mean, what we've seen in the game looks really exciting. I can't wait to check out some more of it, and I suspect Transformers fans who are watching this video may be flipping out as much as we are, because I mean, really, it seems like you guys have an eye to not only what, and this is what is always so challenging about working on a license, right? Is like nailing the franchise and simultaneously getting a good game out of it, and I think War for Cybertron hit that, but you guys are really advancing that a lot with what you're showing off in Fall of Cybertron.
We are definitely our hardest critics,
yeah.
And we are definitely pushing what I think, if you got War for Cybertron and you liked it, this game, in my opinion, exceeds it in every single possible way. Like, I think you're going to be so blown away with what's on that disc when you get a hold of this game. So I can't wait to I love talking about it because I think it's really going to blow people away when they see it.
That's great. Well, thanks for chatting with us.
Yeah, let's go make some Transformers and drink hard water. Good interview. Good interview.
Ben's out.
This meeting is over.